The tension in the room shifted the moment Jungkook said it. "I'm getting married." The words didn't sound real at first. They floated in the air between them, too calm, too simple, as if he had just mentioned the weather or a schedule change. But Taehyung felt them land in his chest with a dull, heavy force. "What?" he asked softly, almost laughing. "You're what?" Jungkook didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the tabletop, where two untouched cups of coffee were slowly going cold. The studio room was small, soundproof, built for interviews and rehearsals, not for confessions that could change everything. "I said yes," Jungkook repeated, quieter this time. Taehyung stared at him, waiting for a punchline that never came. The silence stretched, thick and uncomfortable, filled only by the low hum of the air conditioner. Taehyung's fingers tightened around the paper cup in his hand. He hadn't even realized he was holding it until the heat burned his skin. "You're serious," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Jungkook finally looked up. Their eyes met for half a second, and that was enough. There was no joke in Jungkook's expression. No teasing, no mischief. Just something guarded, tired, and painfully sincere. Taehyung felt something inside him crack. "Since when?" he asked. Jungkook hesitated. "A while." "A while," Taehyung repeated, disbelief creeping into his tone. "How long is a while, Jungkook?" "Long enough." That answer hurt more than the truth would have. Taehyung stood up so suddenly that the chair scraped loudly against the floor. The sound echoed harshly in the small room, breaking whatever fragile calm was left. "So everyone knows," Taehyung said, his voice shaking now. "Managers, staff, families, and I'm just finding out." Jungkook didn't respond. Taehyung laughed, but there was no humor in it. "That's impressive. Really. I didn't even know I had been removed from your life this efficiently." "That's not what this is," Jungkook said quickly. "Then what is it?" Taehyung snapped, finally looking directly at him. His eyes were glossy, not from tears, but from the effort of holding them back. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you planned an entire future and forgot to mention I wasn't part of it." Jungkook opened his mouth, then closed it again. His hands rested on the table, fingers tense, like he was holding himself in place. "I didn't plan it," he said. "It just happened." Taehyung shook his head slowly. "Funny. Things like this always seem to just happen when people don't want to take responsibility for them." "That's not fair." "No," Taehyung replied, his voice low and controlled. "What's not fair is pretending everything between us was normal while you were out there building a life I didn't even know existed." The room felt smaller, the walls closing in with every word. "I shouldn't have come today," Taehyung muttered, more to himself than to Jungkook. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and walked toward the door. "Taehyung." But he didn't stop. The heavy door shut behind him with a dull thud that sounded far too final. For a moment, Jungkook just sat there. The empty chair across from him felt louder than any argument. He stared at the door, his jaw clenched, his chest tight, as if all the air had been sucked out of the room with Taehyung. Seconds passed. Then Jungkook stood up. The hallway outside was quiet, lined with framed photos from old recording sessions. Smiling faces, behind-the-scenes moments, memories from a time when everything felt simpler. Taehyung's footsteps echoed ahead, fast but unsteady. "Taehyung," Jungkook called, his voice softer than he intended. Taehyung didn't respond. They reached the glass door that led to the side exit of the building. Bright afternoon light spilled in from outside, cold and sharp. Taehyung stopped just before pushing it open, his back still turned. "How long have you known?" he asked flatly. Jungkook slowed his steps. "Since before I told anyone else." Taehyung let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "So I really was the last one." "It's not what you think," Jungkook said. "Then tell me what it is," Taehyung replied, finally turning around. Their eyes met again, and this time Taehyung didn't look away. His expression was calm on the surface, but something underneath it was breaking. Because right now, it feels like I spent years trying to understand you, waiting for you, trusting you, while you were quietly choosing a life where I didn't exist. Jungkook took a step closer, then stopped himself. I didn't mean to hurt you, he said. But you did, Taehyung replied simply. There was no anger in his voice, just truth. And the worst part is, you didn't even give me the chance to prepare for it. The street outside was loud with distant traffic, people walking past without noticing the two of them frozen behind the glass. She's not who I expected, Jungkook admitted suddenly. I think I said yes because I was trying to fix something broken inside me. Taehyung's jaw tightened. And that something has nothing to do with her and everything to do with me. Jungkook didn't answer. That was answer enough. You and I, Jungkook said quietly, we left too many things unsaid. Taehyung's shoulders softened just a little, and now it's too late to say them. Jungkook took another step forward. This time, Taehyung didn't move away. Jungkook's hand lifted instinctively, reaching out, then stopping in midair, unsure. Why now? Taehyung whispered. Why tell me now when it doesn't matter anymore? Jungkook swallowed. Because I needed you to know, even if I walk into something new, I'll always carry what we were. You were never nothing to me. You were everything, just without a name. The words hung between them, heavy and dangerous. Taehyung turned his face away, blinking rapidly as the sunlight hit his eyes. I hate that you waited this long, he said softly, but I don't hate you. Jungkook's breath caught. Then what do you want me to do? He asked. Taehyung was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally said. I think I just need time to understand how to be around you without wanting answers you'll never give. Jungkook nodded slowly. The distance between them was still there, but it no longer felt impossible. The city moved on outside, unaware of the quiet devastation happening behind the glass. I didn't think you'd follow me, Taehyung said, his back resting against the door. I didn't plan to, Jungkook admitted. But watching you walk away felt like something I couldn't let happen, not this time. Taehyung looked at him, really looked at him, as if searching for the version of Jungkook he thought he knew. You let me walk away before, he said, and you said nothing. Jungkook didn't deny it. I was afraid saying the wrong thing would destroy what little we had left. And saying nothing destroyed it anyway, Taehyung replied. The truth settled between them, sharp and undeniable. Neither of them moved. But for the first time since the words "I'm getting married" were spoken, neither of them was walking away in silence. The silence between them didn't feel peaceful. It felt unfinished. Taehyung was the first to move. He pushed the glass door open and stepped outside, letting the cold afternoon air hit his face. Jungkook followed a second later, the sound of the door closing behind them softer this time, almost careful. They stood on the narrow sidewalk beside the building. Cars passed in the distance. People walked by without recognizing them, unaware that something fragile was unraveling in real time. Taehyung crossed his arms, more for comfort than warmth. You know what hurts the most, he said quietly. It's not even the engagement itself. Jungkook turned to him. Then what is it? Taehyung let out a slow breath. It's realizing that I was honest with you in a way you were never honest with me. Jungkook's brows furrowed. That's not true. Isn't it? Taehyung asked, finally looking at him again. I told you when I was confused. I told you when I felt lonely. I told you when I started to feel things I didn't know how to name. And you stood there, listened to everything, and still chose to keep something this big from me. Jungkook felt his chest tighten. I was trying to protect you. Taehyung shook his head. No, you were trying to protect yourself. The words weren't shouted. They didn't need to be. They landed clean and precise, cutting deeper than anger ever could. I thought silence would be kinder, Jungkook said, his voice low. I thought if I didn't drag you into my mess, you'd be spared from it. Taehyung laughed bitterly. You really thought being kept in the dark was kindness. He took a step closer, the space between them shrinking to something dangerous. I wasn't asking to be spared, Jungkook. He said, I was asking to be seen. Jungkook swallowed hard. I saw you. Then why does it feel like I was invisible the moment things got complicated? Jungkook didn't have an answer. His silence said everything. Taehyung looked away again, his gaze drifting to the street, to strangers living lives untouched by this kind of quiet damage. Do you know what it's like, he continued, his voice softer now, to wake up every day and wonder if you imagined everything, every look, every moment, every late-night conversation, to keep telling yourself you're not crazy for feeling something when the other person refuses to name it. Jungkook felt a sharp ache behind his ribs. You were never imagining it, he said. You were in every song I couldn't finish, every place I visited alone, wondering what it would have felt like if you were there beside me. Taehyung's lips parted slightly, but he didn't smile. Then why was I the last to know about your future? Jungkook closed his eyes for a second. Because I didn't know how to say it without losing you forever. Taehyung's voice cracked for the first time. So you chose to lose me quietly instead. The question hung between them. Jungkook stepped forward instinctively, but Taehyung didn't step back this time. Do you know how cruel that feels now? Taehyung asked. You stood next to me all these months, acting like nothing had changed, making me believe I was still part of your world. Jungkook's voice broke slightly. Do you know how it feels to realize the only person who truly knows you doesn't trust you anymore? Taehyung's eyes shimmered, but the tears didn't fall. I trusted you with everything, he said, even when I shouldn't have. Jungkook lifted his hand as if to wipe Taehyung's cheek, then stopped halfway, his fingers trembling before dropping back to his side. It wasn't just about the engagement, Jungkook admitted. There were pressures, family expectations, timelines. I didn't even know if I wanted it. Taehyung looked at him sharply. Then why agree to it? Because everyone said it was right, Jungkook replied bitterly. Because I thought maybe if I did what was expected, the emptiness would go away. And did it? Taehyung asked. Jungkook shook his head slowly. It's only louder now. Taehyung stared at him for a long moment, then spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. And now you want me to do what? Forgive you? Jungkook hesitated. No, I want you to understand me, and maybe, one day, decide for yourself if I'm worth forgiving. Taehyung looked down at his hands, his fingers slowly unclenching. You broke something, he said quietly. I don't know if it can be fixed. Then let me try, Jungkook said. Not with words, with time, with honesty, with showing up even when I'm scared. Taehyung didn't respond immediately. I don't know what I need right now, he finally murmured, but I know I need space. Jungkook nodded, his throat tight. I'll wait. And if I never come back? Taehyung asked. Jungkook met his eyes without flinching. Then at least I'll know I finally told you the truth. The wind picked up, rustling the trees along the street. Taehyung took a step back toward the building, then paused. For what it's worth, he said softly, without turning around, you were always worth more than silence. Then he walked back inside. Jungkook stayed outside for a moment longer, staring at the closed door, letting the weight of everything settle into his chest. He didn't follow this time, but his heart did. The next morning, Taehyung stood alone in his apartment, sunlight spilling across the wooden floor. An untouched mug of coffee sat in his hand, already cold. He hadn't slept. He kept replaying Jungkook's voice in his head, every hesitation, every confession, every moment where he almost reached out but didn't. A knock at the door broke the stillness. Taehyung froze. It came again, gentle but persistent. He walked over slowly and opened the door. No one was there. Only a small cream-colored envelope on the floor. His heart sank as he picked it up. The handwriting on the front was unmistakable. Inside was a single note. "I'll be at the place with the piano. No pressure. JK." Taehyung stared at the words for a long time. The place with the piano. An old recording studio hidden behind a small art gallery. A place they used to sneak into after hours, just to talk, just to breathe. He didn't want to go. He went anyway. The studio smelled like dust and memories. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting soft lines across the floor. The upright piano in the corner still had the chipped E key. Jungkook was sitting on the floor, cross-legged, facing the instrument. He looked up when Taehyung entered, surprise and relief flashing across his face. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said quietly. "Neither was I," Taehyung replied, closing the door behind him. Jungkook gestured beside him. "Sit if you want." Taehyung hesitated, then slowly lowered himself to the floor next to him. Their shoulders were close, but not touching. A long silence passed. "You remember the night we wrote that unreleased track here?" Jungkook asked softly. "You were stuck on the second verse for hours." "And you solved it with a melody I said I hated," Taehyung replied, "but ended up loving." Jungkook smiled faintly. "We made a lot of good things out of messy beginnings." Taehyung leaned his head back against the wall. "So is that why you brought me here?" he asked. "To remind me of the past?" Jungkook shook his head. "No, I brought you here because this is the only place I know where we ever spoke honestly." The words settled between them. "Then speak honestly," Taehyung said. Jungkook took a deep breath. "I think I've been hiding behind the idea that doing the right thing means doing what everyone expects. I said yes to the proposal because I thought it would end all the questions people kept throwing at me." Taehyung turned his head toward him. "And did it?" "No," Jungkook said. "It just created more." Taehyung studied him, "Then break it off." Jungkook flinched. "It's not that simple." "Why not?" "Because it's not just about me," Jungkook replied. "It's about my family, the company, the image they've built. If I walk away now, I don't know what will collapse." Taehyung's voice was steady. "So you'd rather sacrifice your own happiness?" Jungkook looked down. "I think I owe them stability." "And what do you owe yourself?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook didn't answer. Taehyung exhaled slowly. "Do you even know what you want anymore? Or are you just moving through expectations until you forget what you ever felt?" "Don't do that," Jungkook snapped softly. "Don't act like you know what it's like to be torn in 10 directions at once." "You're right," Taehyung said calmly. "I don't, but I do know what it's like to love someone who's too afraid to choose me." The air between them tightened. Jungkook stood up. "This isn't just about choosing you." "Then what is it about?" Taehyung asked, rising too. Jungkook's eyes burned. "It's about burning bridges I might never be able to rebuild." "Then let them burn," Taehyung said quietly. "If they can't accept who you really are, what are you preserving them for?" Jungkook stared at him, shaken. "And what if I don't know who I really am?" he whispered. "What if I've spent so long pretending I don't even recognize myself anymore?" Taehyung's voice softened. "Then let's figure it out together." The words slipped out before he could stop them. Jungkook froze. "So you'd still do that?" he asked. "After everything?" Taehyung's eyes glistened. "I never stopped hoping you'd let me in." The words hung between them like a fragile bridge. "Then let's figure it out together." Jungkook didn't move. For a moment, he simply stared at Taehyung as if the offer itself was too dangerous to touch. "You don't understand what you're offering," he said quietly. Taehyung met his gaze without flinching. "I do, and that's why I'm still standing here." Jungkook laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. "If you walk into this with me, it won't be simple. There will be rumors, pressure. People trying to rewrite our story before we even get to tell it ourselves. Taehyung took a step closer. They've been rewriting it for years anyway. Jungkook's jaw tightened. And if I fail you? Taehyung's voice was steady. Then at least it will be real. Silence returned, heavier than before. Jungkook finally looked away, his hands clenched at his sides. I don't know how to undo what I've already promised. Then start by being honest, Taehyung replied. Not with the world, with yourself. Jungkook exhaled slowly, like someone stepping toward the edge of a cliff. I've been living two versions of my life, he admitted. One where I smile for cameras, say all the right things, follow the script everyone wrote for me, and another one where I keep imagining a life that feels quieter, smaller, but more honest. Taehyung listened, his heart tightening with every word. And in that life, Taehyung asked, am I there? Jungkook didn't hesitate this time. Yes. The single word felt heavier than any confession. Taehyung swallowed. Then why are you still pretending the other life is the one you want? Jungkook's voice dropped. Because I'm terrified of what happens when I stop pretending. Taehyung reached out without thinking and took Jungkook's wrist. The contact was gentle, but it sent a visible shiver through him. You don't have to decide everything today, Taehyung said. Just stop lying to yourself. Jungkook looked down at their hands, then slowly intertwined their fingers. I don't know how to choose you without destroying everything else, he whispered. Taehyung squeezed his hand. Sometimes choosing yourself feels like destruction from the outside. Jungkook closed his eyes. I'm scared I'll regret it, he admitted. And I'm scared I already regret staying silent this long, Taehyung replied. They stood like that, fingers still linked, breathing in the same uncertain air. Then Jungkook gently pulled his hand away. I need time, he said, not to run but to think clearly for once. Taehyung nodded, even though his chest ached. Take it, just don't disappear again. Jungkook hesitated. If I talk to her, if I tell her I'm unsure. Taehyung stiffened slightly. You don't have to explain every detail, just don't make promises you can't keep. Jungkook gave a bitter smile. I've already done that. Taehyung looked at the piano again, the dusty keys reflecting faint light. Do you remember what you told me the first time we came here? He asked. Jungkook frowned slightly. What? You said this room feels safe because no one expects anything from us here. No image, no roles, just sound and silence. Jungkook's eyes softened. I remember. Taehyung's voice lowered. That's all I'm asking for, a place where I don't have to compete with the version of you the world wants. Jungkook looked at him, guilt and longing colliding in his expression. I never meant to make you feel like a second choice. Taehyung's voice barely held, but that's what silence does. Jungkook inhaled sharply. I'll talk to her, he said suddenly. Taehyung froze. Are you sure? No, Jungkook replied, but I'm more sure than I've been about anything in months. Taehyung studied him carefully. And what will you say? That I rushed into something because I was afraid of uncertainty, Jungkook said, and that I need to stop pretending I'm okay. Taehyung nodded slowly. That's a start. Jungkook looked at him again, and after that? Taehyung didn't answer immediately. After that, he said softly, I don't know, maybe we finally get to be honest about what we are. Jungkook let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. They left the studio together, but this time they didn't walk side by side. There was a small space between them, filled with things unsaid but no longer empty. That night Taehyung lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. His phone was face down beside him. Every vibration made his heart race. At 2:17 a.m. the screen finally lit up. JK, can we talk tomorrow? Taehyung's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He typed, erased, typed again. Yes. No emojis, no extra words. Just yes. The next day felt endless. Taehyung went through schedules on autopilot, smiled when needed, laughed when expected, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. At 6:43 p.m., Jungkook called. Taehyung answered on the first ring. "Where are you?" Jungkook asked. "Rooftop," Taehyung replied. "Come up." The city lights shimmered below them when Jungkook arrived. The wind was stronger here, carrying distant traffic noise and the smell of rain. Jungkook stood a few steps away, hands in his pockets. "I told her," he said. Taehyung's heart skipped, and she cried, Jungkook admitted. Not angry, just confused, hurt. Taehyung's chest tightened. "What did you say?" "That I wasn't ready. That I agreed because I thought it was what I was supposed to want. But I'm not sure about anything anymore." Taehyung looked at him carefully. "Did you mention me?" Jungkook hesitated. "No, I said there was someone important in my life, but I didn't give names." Taehyung nodded slowly. That was probably the kindest way. Jungkook swallowed. She asked if there was someone else. "And what did you say?" Jungkook met his eyes. "I said I don't know what to call it yet, but I know I don't want to keep lying." Taehyung exhaled. "So what happens now?" he asked. Jungkook looked at the skyline, then back at Taehyung. "Now I'm officially the person who ruined a perfect story." Taehyung smiled sadly. "Or the person who finally stopped pretending to live in one." Jungkook stepped closer, the distance between them shrinking again. "I don't know what the future looks like," he said, "but I know I don't want to walk into it alone." Taehyung's voice trembled slightly. "And I don't want to be your secret anymore." Jungkook reached out, hesitating for only a second before gently placing his hand over Taehyung's. "Then don't be," he said, "be my choice." Taehyung looked down at their hands, then back up at him. "Don't say that unless you mean it," he whispered. Jungkook didn't pull away. "I mean it more than anything I've ever said on a stage." The wind roared around them, but for the first time in months, Taehyung felt strangely calm. Because whatever came next, at least this time, they were facing it together. For a few days, nothing happened. And somehow, that was the hardest part. No statements, no headlines, no dramatic fallout, just an unsettling quiet that made Taehyung feel like he was standing in the middle of a paused world, waiting for gravity to remember him again. Jungkook texted every morning. "Did you sleep? Eat something today. I'm thinking about you." Simple messages, ordinary words, but they carried a weight that made Taehyung's chest tighten every time his phone lit up. They didn't meet in public anymore. Not because they were hiding, but because neither of them knew what they were yet. One evening, they sat in Jungkook's car, parked near the river. The windows were fogged from the cold, the city lights reflecting faintly across the windshield. Neither of them spoke for a long time. "This feels strange," Taehyung finally said. Jungkook glanced at him. "What does?" "Being this close to you, without pretending we're just friends." Jungkook gave a small smile. "We were never very good at pretending." Taehyung leaned his head back against the seat. "I keep thinking about her," he admitted. "Not in a jealous way, just wondering how she's doing." Jungkook's hands tightened around the steering wheel. "I think she hates me." Taehyung didn't reply immediately. "Maybe she doesn't hate you," he said carefully. "Maybe she just hates the version of you that made promises he wasn't sure about." Jungkook exhaled. "That version still feels like me." Taehyung turned to look at him. "No, that version is you trying to survive expectations." Jungkook laughed quietly. "You always make it sound kinder than it is." "That's because I know you," Taehyung replied. "Not the headline version, the real one." Jungkook's gaze softened. "That's what scares me," he admitted. "You see me when I don't even recognize myself anymore." Taehyung reached over and rested his hand on Jungkook's arm. "Then let me remind you who you are," he said. not who they want you to be. Jungkook looked down at their hands, then slowly turned off the engine. The silence between them shifted. Not empty, just uncertain. "Can I ask you something?" Jungkook said. Taehyung nodded. "If I hadn't said anything, if I had gone through with everything as planned, would you have stayed?" Taehyung didn't answer right away. He thought about the nights he spent staring at his phone, about the unspoken feelings, about the quiet ache he tried to pretend was nothing. "I would have stayed physically," he said softly, "but not emotionally. I think I would have slowly disappeared from myself." Jungkook's throat tightened. "I'm sorry I put you in that position." Taehyung smiled faintly. "I stayed because I loved you, not because you forced me." Jungkook finally turned fully toward him. "Do you still?" he asked. The question wasn't dramatic, it wasn't desperate. It was honest. Taehyung met his eyes. "Yes." Jungkook closed his eyes for a second, as if absorbing the weight of that single word. Then he leaned forward, resting his forehead lightly against Taehyung's. They didn't kiss. Not yet. The moment felt too fragile for something that final. Instead, they stayed like that, breathing in the same space, sharing the same quiet. The next morning, everything changed. Taehyung woke up to dozens of notifications. Missed calls, group chat explosion, messages from staff. And one headline, sent by Jimin with no caption. Jungkook case engagement in trouble. Insider claims unresolved feelings. Taehyung stared at the screen. So it had begun. He called Jungkook immediately. Jungkook answered on the first ring. "You saw it?" "Yeah." "I didn't say anything," Jungkook said quickly. "I swear." "I know," Taehyung replied, "but someone did." Jungkook was silent for a moment. "They're asking me to make a statement," he said. Taehyung's chest tightened. "What kind of statement?" "One that calms people down. Something vague, something about focusing on work." Taehyung closed his eyes. "And will you?" Jungkook hesitated. "I don't want to lie again," he said. Taehyung's voice was quiet. "But you're not ready to tell the truth either." Jungkook sighed. "No, I'm not." Taehyung leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of reality finally press in. "Then whatever you say will still affect me," he said. "I know," Jungkook replied. "That's what's killing me." They met later that night, not at the studio, not at the river, but in a small apartment one of their managers used for private meetings. Neutral territory. No memories. Just tension. Jungkook sat on the couch, his phone face down on the table. "They want me to say the relationship is fine," he said, "that the rumors are exaggerated." Taehyung sat across from him. "And is it fine?" he asked. Jungkook looked at him helplessly. "No, it's complicated." Taehyung nodded. "Then say that." "They won't accept that," Jungkook replied. "They want stability." Taehyung let out a slow breath. "And what do you want?" Jungkook didn't answer immediately. "I want you," he said finally, "but I don't know how to say that without destroying everything." Taehyung's voice trembled. "So I remain invisible again." Jungkook flinched. "That's not fair." "But it's true," Taehyung replied. "No matter what you say publicly, I'm still the one who doesn't exist in your story." Jungkook stood up. "This isn't about erasing you." "Then what is it about?" Taehyung asked, standing too. "It's about survival," Jungkook said. "Mine, yours, everyone." Taehyung shook his head slowly. "Love isn't supposed to feel like a PR crisis." Jungkook's voice cracked. "Neither is being myself." They stood facing each other, both breathing hard. "So what happens now?" Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked exhausted. "I'll make a statement," he said, "but not the one they wrote." Taehyung froze. "What are you going to say?" "That I need time. That I rushed into something I wasn't ready for. that I'm figuring things out. Taehyung's heart raced. They'll tear you apart. Jungkook gave a sad smile. They already are. Taehyung stepped closer, and me. Jungkook looked at him, eyes burning with something dangerously close to resolve. I won't name you, he said, but I won't deny you either. Taehyung swallowed. That's still risky. I know, Jungkook replied, but I'm done pretending my feelings don't exist. Taehyung stared at him, torn between fear and something that felt like hope. You're choosing the hardest path, he said. Jungkook reached out and took his hand. I'm choosing the honest one. Taehyung squeezed his fingers. Then whatever happens next, he said softly, don't let them turn you into someone you're not again. Jungkook nodded. I won't, he promised, not this time. Outside, the city continued moving. Inside, two people stood on the edge of a truth that was about to change everything. The statement was released at noon. Not during a live broadcast, not during a fan event, just a simple post through official channels, written in careful words that tried to sound calm while hiding the storm behind them. I rushed into something without fully understanding my own feelings. I need time to reflect and be honest with myself. I ask for privacy and understanding during this period. No names. No confirmations. No denials. But it was enough. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Taehyung watched it all unfold from his phone, his timeline refreshing faster than his thoughts could keep up. Fans were split. Some supportive. Some angry. Some confused. Some already building theories. And some painfully already pointing fingers. His name wasn't trending. But the hints were there. Who's the someone else? Why does this feel familiar? Didn't he look different around Taehyung lately? Taehyung placed his phone face down on the table and leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. So this was what honesty looked like in public. Messy, loud, uncontrollable. His phone buzzed again. JK, are you okay? Taehyung stared at the message for a long moment before replying. I don't know yet. A few minutes later, there was a knock on his door. He already knew who it was. Jungkook stood in the hallway, wearing a cap pulled low, his eyes tired but alert, like someone who hadn't slept since making a life-altering decision. They're calling me nonstop, Jungkook said quietly. Managers, PR, even my mom. Taehyung stepped aside and let him in. The apartment felt too small for the tension they brought with them. Jungkook dropped onto the couch and ran a hand through his hair. They're saying I should clarify, fix it, make it sound temporary. Taehyung crossed his arms. Isn't it temporary? Jungkook looked up at him. I don't want it to be. The words landed harder than any headline. Taehyung's chest tightened. Then you know what they'll do next. Jungkook nodded. They'll dig, they'll connect dots, they'll find you. Taehyung walked over and sat across from him. And when they do... Jungkook's voice was barely audible. I don't know if I can protect you. Taehyung laughed softly without humor. I've been in this industry just as long as you. I know what I signed up for. That doesn't mean I want you to suffer because of me, Jungkook replied. Taehyung studied his face. The exhaustion, the fear, the strange calm underneath it all. You didn't choose the easy way, Taehyung said, so don't pretend you still can. Jungkook exhaled. Everyone's telling me I made a mistake. And what do you think? Taehyung asked. Jungkook looked at him without hesitation. I think I've finally told the truth. Taehyung felt something in his chest loosen. That night they stayed inside. No music, no distractions, just the sound of rain against the windows and the soft glow of city lights bleeding through the curtains. They sat on opposite ends of the couch, close enough to feel each other's presence, far enough to feel the weight of what lay between them. Do you regret it? Taehyung asked suddenly. Jungkook turned to him. The statement. Everything, Taehyung replied, opening this door. Jungkook thought for a moment. I regret waiting so long, he said. I regret letting fear decide for me, but I don't regret choosing you. Taehyung swallowed. Even if it costs you. Jungkook's gaze softened. Especially if it costs me, because at least then it's something I chose. The rain grew heavier outside. Taehyung leaned back, staring at the ceiling. I keep thinking about what happens when this becomes real, he said. Not just between us, but in the world. Jungkook nodded. I know, I've imagined the headlines, the backlash, the questions I won't be allowed to answer. Taehyung turned his head toward him. Are you strong enough for that? Jungkook smiled faintly. I don't know, but I'm tired of being strong for everyone except myself. Taehyung reached out and took Jungkook's hand again.